Something is very wrong in League of Legends. 9 teams have won the Mid-Season Invitational, the second biggest tournament in the world. 9 teams travelled to Worlds as favourites, carrying momentum and confidence. 8 of them failed. A nearly 90% failure rate. One pattern spanning 9 years, 3 regions, and some of the greatest rosters ever assembled. The last time it was broken, 2016, nearly a decade ago. And GenG just became victim number 9. They'd won MSI twice, back-to-back championships in 2024 and 2025. They were the most dominant team in the world for 2 straight years. Then they lost to KT Rolster in the World semi-finals, a massive upset that no one saw coming. Another MSI champion eliminated when it mattered most. Here's what you need to understand. Winning MSI has become a death sentence for Worlds. The second biggest trophy now all but guarantees you won't win the first. Let me set the stage for you. MSI started in 2015 to give League a second international tournament each year. It's the midpoint proving ground. Spring champions and runner-ups from every major region collide. Korea's best versus China's best versus Europe versus North America. Win MSI and you've beaten everyone on neutral ground. The tournament happens in May or June. Worlds happens in October or November. That gives winners nearly 5 months to prepare. 5 months to practice, refine strategies, and study opponents. Think about what that should mean. In traditional sports, winning in June should build momentum for October. Experience under pressure should breed confidence. You should arrive at the next tournament sharper and stronger than teams that only played regionally. Well, that's not what happens. Instead, something breaks. 9 MSI champions, 8 failures at Worlds. 4 were eliminated in the quarterfinals, 2 fell in the semi-finals. 2 made it all the way to finals, only to be swept. The numbers are striking not just for their consistency, but for what they represent. MSI victory has become a better predictor of Worlds failure than success. But why? How does the same pattern keep repeating across different teams and different years? So the pattern started in 2015 with Edward Gaming. EDG was China's spring champion, featuring a roster built around 2 future legends. Mid laner Pawn, who'd previously won Worlds with Samsung White, and AD carry Deft, one of the most mechanically gifted players to ever touch the game. At MSI, they looked unstoppable. They defeated SKT T1 in the finals, the team led by Faker himself. 5 games that suggested a new order was emerging. You can imagine the confidence heading into Worlds. They'd beaten the defending world champions. They had 5 months to prepare. The tournament was being held in Europe, and they had the most favourable seeding. Everything pointed toward EDG finally bringing a world championship to China. Quarterfinals, Fnatic eliminated them 3-0. It wasn't even close. Fnatic was a European team EDG had dominated just months earlier at MSI, but by October, everything had changed. The meta shifted from pick-focused skirmishing to teamfight-oriented compositions. EDG couldn't adapt quickly enough. More importantly, every team at Worlds had spent 5 months studying EDG's MSI performance. Their tendencies, their draft patterns, their vision control, all of it analysed and countered. The team that looked unbeatable in May looked completely lost by October. At the time, people dismissed it as an isolated incident. One good team failing to adapt. But it wasn't an isolated incident. It was the beginning of something larger. What happened to EDG wasn't unique. Watch what happens next. In 2017, SK Telecom T1 won their second MSI championship. Faker, Honey, Peanut, Bang, and Wolf. A roster many considered the most talented ever assembled on a single team. They arrived at Worlds as obvious favourites. They made it further than any MSI winner since their own 2016 victory, reaching the finals. Then Samsung Galaxy swept them 3-0 in one of the most one-sided finals in Worlds history. The team that had looked invincible all year was dismantled in 3 straight games. But the real heartbreak came in 2018 with Royal Never Give Up. RNG was the Chinese juggernaut, led by Uzi, perhaps the greatest player to never win a world championship. Their 2018 season was supposed to be different. They won both Spring Split and MSI, dominating with an aggressive bot lane-focused playstyle that teams simply couldn't answer. Uzi was playing at his absolute peak, flanked by Xiao Hu in mid and Kasa in the jungle. Then they won Summer Split too. You need to understand what this meant. RNG had won every major tournament available to them. They were first seed from China, the most dominant team all year, and they were playing on home soil with the entire LPL region behind them. The Golden Road, winning Spring, MSI, Summer and Worlds in the same year, felt inevitable. Quarterfinals. G2 Esports eliminated them in 5 games. G2 was the third seed from Europe, a team that had barely made it through the play-in stage. In the final match, G2's mid laner, Caps, outplayed Xiaohu in multiple crucial teamfights. RNG, the team that had won everything else, was eliminated. Uzi would never get another chance. He retired in 2020 without a Worlds title. The following year, G2 Esports themselves became believers in the curse. After defeating SKT T1 at MSI in one of the greatest series ever played, a 5-game war where Caps solo killed Faker multiple times, G2 looked like the Western team that would finally break through. They'd beaten the final boss. They'd proven European League could match Korea at its peak. They spent the summer refining their chaotic, versatile playstyle. They made it to the World's Finals. FunPlus Phoenix swept them 3-0. It wasn't competitive. G2's adaptability, the trait that had carried them through MSI and the bracket, vanished when it mattered most. FPX had studied G2's MSI performance and identified which champions each player truly excelled on versus the ones they played for flexibility. They banned accordingly. Caps, who had outplayed Faker, couldn't solve Doinby. The team that beat the GOAT couldn't beat the LPL's unconventional genius. Royal Never Give Up tried again in 2021 and 2022, winning MSI both years. Both years, they failed at Worlds. In 2021, they fell in the semi-finals after a grueling 5-game series against EDG. In 2022, they were eliminated in quarterfinals by T1, swept 3-0 in a match that wasn't remotely close. 2 MSI championships in 3 years, 0 Worlds titles. The same pattern over and over. Different teams, different regions, different metas, but the result remained constant. MSI winners don't win Worlds. Now let me tell you about GenG, the team that should have ended this discussion entirely. GenG had not 1, but 2 separate chances to break the curse. 2 full years of dominance. 2 opportunities to prove the pattern was just coincidence. Their failure last week might have cemented this as something beyond bad luck. Their 2024 season started with complete dominance. They won the LCK Spring Split without dropping a single series, a perfect 18-0 record across regular season and playoffs. Their roster featured Chovy, widely considered the best laner in the world, supported by 4 players at the peak of their careers. They entered MSI as overwhelming favorites and proved every prediction correct. They won the tournament, defeating teams from every region with a clinical precision that suggested they'd simply figured out how to play League of Legends better than everyone else. The confidence was justified. GenG's understanding of macro play was flawless. Their ability to draft power picks in multiple roles set them apart. Their synchronization in teamfights was perfect. They'd beaten China's best. They dismantled Europe's champions. They looked unbeatable. The conversation around GenG wasn't whether they would win Worlds, it was whether anyone could take a single game off them in a best of 5. They won Summer Split. They entered Worlds 2024 having lost only a handful of series all year, none of them internationally. They were Korea's first seed. They had months to prepare and all the data from their MSI victory to build upon. Semi-finals. T1 beat them 3-1. Let that sink in. T1 was Korea's 4th seed, a team that had struggled through the regular season and barely made Worlds through the regional qualifier. On paper, GenG should have won easily. They had better seeding, better recent performance, and they defeated T1 multiple times during the year. The series went 4 games. Faker, at 28 years old, outplayed Chovy in multiple crucial moments. GenG's perfect macro crumbled under T1's aggressive early game pressure. The team that had looked unbeatable for 9 months was eliminated. Most teams would have seen that as the end of their window. Most teams would have made roster changes, questioned their approach, or rebuilt around new strategies. GenG ran it back. The exact same roster. All 5 players returned for 2025. They won LCK Spring Split again. They won MSI again, becoming the first team in history to win back-to-back Mid-Season Invitationals. 2 MSI trophies in 2 years. If dominance and experience could break the curse, GenG had both in abundance. November 1st, Worlds 2025 semi-finals. GenG faced KT Rolster. KT was the third seed from Korea, a team GenG had beaten multiple times during the year. GenG had every advantage you could possibly have. Better seed, more international experience, the confidence of being back-to-back MSI champions, and the motivation of last year's failure driving them forward. The matchup wasn't supposed to be close. KT won 3-1. They didn't just win, they exposed GenG's entire identity. The controlled macro play that had defined GenG for 2 years faltered against KT's aggressive jungle pathing. Chovy, the best laner in the world, couldn't translate his individual leads into teamfight victories. The same weakness that T1 had exploited in 2024 reappeared when it mattered most. GenG became the 9th victim of the MSI Curse. More than that, we can argue there hasn't been a team with higher expectations throughout this 2 years than this version of GenG. If any roster could have broken the pattern through sheer dominance, it was this one. They had the talent, the preparation, the experience, and the motivation. They'd learned from their first failure and came back stronger, and they still couldn't do it. However, there is one exception. One team that escaped the curse. One roster that won MSI and then won Worlds in the same year. Understanding how they did it might explain why no one else has replicated it. SK Telecom T1's 2016 season was different from every other MSI winner in one crucial way. They didn't dominate MSI. They won, certainly. They defeated CLG, RNG, and Flash Wolves to claim the trophy, but the tournament was competitive. They dropped games. They were challenged in multiple series. They didn't leave MSI looking invincible. They left looking good but beatable. And this mattered because it changed how teams prepared for them at Worlds. While EDG, RNG, and G2 all entered Worlds as the teams everyone had spent months studying and countering, SKT arrived with a different reputation. They were the spring MSI winners, yes, but they were also the team that had struggled in summer, finishing second in the LCK playoffs to KT Rolster. They weren't the overwhelming favourites. The target on their back was smaller. More importantly, SKT's roster had something no other MSI winner possessed: championship experience at the highest level. These weren't players experiencing Worlds pressure for the first time. Duke had won in 2013. Bengi had won in 2013 and 2015. Faker had been to 4 World Championships by 2016. When the pressure mounted in the knockout stage, when adapting to new metas and opponent strategies became critical, SKT had players who had navigated those exact situations before and succeeded. The final difference was strategic. SKT's coaching staff made meta reads that other teams missed. At Worlds 2016, while most teams prioritized lane dominance champions and early game pressure, SKT identified that team fighting compositions with strong zone control would be more valuable in best-of-5 series. They drafted accordingly, executed their game plans with precision, and won their 3rd World Championship. But even SKT's success came with a caveat. Faker and his teammates would try to repeat this achievement in 2017. They won MSI again. They made it to the finals of Worlds. Samsung Galaxy swept them 3-0. Even the exception to the curse couldn't escape it a second time. There's another pattern hidden within the MSI curse that almost no one discusses, one that reframes the entire narrative: T1's role in maintaining it. Of the 9 MSI winners from 2015 to 2024, 4 were eliminated from Worlds by T1. Not just eliminated, systematically dismantled by the same organization at the exact same stage when their championship dreams were closest to being realized. RNG 2021. Their path led them to face EDG after T1's victory shuffled the bracket. RNG 2022 swept 3-0 by T1 in the quarterfinals. JDG 2023. The Chinese team that had achieved perfection in the LPL fell to T1 in the semifinals 3-1. GenG 2024, eliminated by T1 in the semifinals after a 3-1 series. 4 different MSI winning rosters, 4 separate years, all 4 removed from Worlds by the same team. The pattern raises a question that reframes the entire curse. Is winning MSI actually a problem, or is facing T1 at Worlds simply inevitable? Consider T1's history: 6 World Championships, 2013, 2015, 2016, 2023, 2024, and most recently 2025 to complete the three-peat. Faker has appeared in 8 Worlds finals across his career. No other team has that consistency. No other roster has that championship pedigree. And critically, T1's approach to the season is fundamentally different from every MSI winner. They don't peak in spring. They build towards Worlds from January through November, treating MSI as valuable practice but not as their ultimate goal. This creates a psychological and strategic gap that becomes apparent at Worlds. MSI winners arrive having already proven themselves internationally. They've experienced the pressure of a tournament finals. They've held a trophy. They know what victory feels like. But T1 arrives hungrier, more focused, with Faker, a player whose Worlds performance have consistently exceeded his regular season play. When an MSI winner faces T1 in a best-of-5 at Worlds, they're not facing the team that lost to them in spring or struggled in summer. They're facing the final form of the most successful organization in League of Legends history. A team that has spent the entire year building toward this exact moment. The curse might not be supernatural. It might just be that winning MSI puts you on a collision course with a team that treats Worlds like their only tournament that truly matters. 9 tournaments, 8 failures, 1 exception nearly a decade ago. The MSI Curse has now persisted long enough that it's no longer a statistical anomaly. It's a pattern that defines modern competitive League of Legends. What makes this curse particularly cruel is that it punishes teams for success. Winning MSI should be an advantage. The international experience, the momentum, the confidence from defeating the best teams in the world, all of it should translate into better performance at Worlds. Instead, it creates expectation. It draws focus from every opposing coaching staff. It puts a target on champions that makes every subsequent match harder to win. The meta shifts between May and November play a role, certainly. Riot patches the game multiple times between tournaments, buffing weak champions and nerfing dominant ones. The strategies that win MSI often become obsolete by Worlds. But meta changes affect every team. They don't explain why MSI winners specifically struggle. Regional competition matters too. Chinese and Korean leagues are brutally competitive, and winning MSI doesn't guarantee winning the summer split, which determines World seeding. But again, this doesn't explain quarter-final eliminations and final sweeps. The real answer might be simpler and more human than any strategic explanation. Winning MSI creates complacency and pressure in equal measure. Teams celebrate the victory, then face months of being studied, countered, and targeted by every opponent. By the time Worlds arrives, they're not the hunters anymore, they're the hunted. And in League of Legends, where small advantages compound and single mistakes end games, being hunted means every opponent plays their absolute best against you while you're trying to recapture a peak you already reached months ago. GenG's double failure, 2 MSI championships, 2 Worlds eliminations might have closed the door on the curse ever being broken. If the most dominant team of the past 2 years couldn't do it, if having 2 separate chances still wasn't enough, then perhaps the pattern is permanent. The next MSI winner will enter Worlds 2026, carrying not just the weight of their own expectations, but the knowledge that 9 teams before them tried and 8 failed. So here's the question that matters. Should teams even want to win MSI anymore? Because in 15 years of League of Legends history, one truth has become undeniable. The second best trophy guarantees you won't win the first. What do you think? Is the curse real, or is it just the inevitable result of facing T1 when it matters most? Let me know in the comments, and if you want to see more deep dives into League of Legends history, subscribe and hit the notification bell. There are plenty of stories left to tell. Thanks for watching.